Roman and his friends were high school buddies. They graduated together and then attended the same institute. Their enduring friendship remained unshakable. They always supported and stood up for each other. After completing their studies, they started a business together. Initially, they opened an automobile repair shop. Soon their business progressed, and they opened another one. Their business flourished, and they shifted to more modern premises. They resolved any issues together, completely trusting each other. Over the years, their friendship was put to the test. Eventually, Roman got married, but one of his friends was still single. Interestingly, Roman's wife, Galina, also studied with them. It was Roma's first love, but he never cared for her much. He thought she was snobbish, but he respected his friend's decision. At their wedding, he had the most enjoyable time. Although they had been attempting to have children for a long time, they had none. Roma was saddened by this. One of them was suspicious, but did not voice any concerns. Roma taunted Dennis about his single life and would often laugh at him. Dennis would jokingly respond that no one had yet been born who could capture his heart. Due to being deceived in his youth, he did not trust women. Despite being successful with girls, he remained wary. Galina was part of the business as a farm bookkeeper, and Roma trusted her as one of his friends, so they all worked together. Unfortunately, Roma was attacked by hooligans one evening as he returned home, and they beat him and hit him with a heavy object on his head. He lay unconscious on the ground for hours, bleeding until he was found and taken to intensive care. The attackers did not take anything valuable, but Dennis was suspicious of them. He told Galina, but she refused to listen, so he decided to investigate. Roma, a solid guy under 6 feet tall, wondered how he could be beaten so easily by only 10 attackers. Something was amiss. He visited his friend every day, occasionally joined by Galia, who stayed briefly. Dennis examined Roma's face carefully, holding his hand. He was in disbelief that the person closest to him was experiencing this. "Please don't go. I will always be here with you. Just wake up. You are strong and you can get through this," Dennis whispered quietly to his friend. However, his friend remained silent, with tears in Dennis's eyes as he feared losing his brother. After a few minutes, Dennis left the hospital. Dennis saw Galina arriving in a familiar car with her driver. He squinted suspiciously as it always confused him when Roma hired a driver for his wife. Dennis started to notice the glances exchanged between Galina and her driver, Maxim. He hinted to his friend that Galina was behaving strangely with the driver, but Roma dismissed the hints and trusted his wife. Galina slowly got out of the car holding the hand of the driver who gave it to her. Dennis noticed the strange couple. Her hand lingered too long in the maximalist's palm until she noticed Dennis. Their hands separated and Galia walked up to him. "Any news?" she asked, her tone chilly. Others might mistake her coldness for concern about her husband's fate, but Dennis couldn't be fooled. He sensed her apathy and edginess. "Nope, everything's unchanged. Gotta go. See you tomorrow." Roman had lain in a coma for nearly 3 weeks, and things on the farm were deteriorating. The business always relied on Roman's guidance and support. Without it, Dennis became confused. Then, strange things occurred. Suddenly, Galina involved herself in all aspects of the business, attempting to replace her husband's anger. The driver Maxim also participated without permission. Dennis expressed displeasure to Galina, but she sharply retorted that it was none of his concern. "I couldn't have completed it without his help since you didn't offer your assistance. So I hired an assistant who proved to be more effective than you," she told Dennis with a sneer. Although he objected, Dennis was silenced by her impudence and arrogance. With each passing day, his suspicions about Galina grew stronger. Maxim wasn't an easy assistant and Dennis was certain that they were romantically involved. They spent time together in and out of the office, perhaps even living together, but he couldn't confirm it after a few days. Dennis decided to tail Galina and uncover where she and Maxim frequently visited. He hailed a cab and asked the driver to wait as long as needed for a free table. After Galina got into her car, Dennis swiftly joined her in the cab, and they trailed her car. Maxim took Galina out of the town and stopped by Galina and Roma's bungalow. Dennis knew without a doubt that Galina had been deceitful to her spouse for a long time. The paramours emerged from the vehicle and began to kiss passionately. Dennis witnessed everything he desired. Dennis drove back to the city and had an interesting idea. He called Gallia and asked her to come to the office urgently. Kalina informed him that she was solving some issues in the bank and would be at the office in 2 hours. Dennis needed her presence, so he drove to the office and paid the cab driver. He then decided to search Roman's office. While his wife was with her lover, he closed the office for a few minutes and examined the situation. Every little thing reminded Dennis of his friendship with Roman and how much they had been together. "Buddy, now I want to save you. But I can't turn back time," whispered Dennis quietly. He started to look through all the documents in the office. Then he looked in the closet, and then he started to dig through the desk. Nothing suspicious was there. Dennis sighed disappointedly. In the last drawer of the desk, he found an old cell phone of a friend. They bought 2 identical cell phones together. Once they had new phones long ago, but they kept these phones from them and didn't call each other on important issues. Also, Galina knew these numbers. Roma also called her. Dennis frequently used this phone. He pondered it for a while before realizing that he had placed Roma's phone in his jacket pocket and departed from the office. Later that evening, Gallia informed him that Roma had passed away in the ICU. Dennis spent the entire evening drinking. In a foggy state, trying to handle his feelings, he sensed that everything could end like this, but he was not ready for it. He had lost half of himself with his friend's death. In the morning, he headed to the valley to discuss the funeral details and was surprised to find out that Galina had already taken care of everything. Galina solved everything with Maxim's help. Dennis was angry at Galina's coldness as she calmly gave orders for the band's funeral. Wreaths are already at the morgue and costumes and necessary items are ready. Dennis glared at Galina while Maxim pretended to support the widow's elbow. But in reality, he was simply caressing her arm, believing that the others were unaware of it. Galina leaned on the driver's arm and occasionally shot meaningful glances at him. Dennis was seething with anger. Dennis believed Galina Maxim played a role in his friend's death. It's possible they planned an attack but only wanted to kill his friend. However, the plan didn't go as expected, and his friend needed resuscitation. Galina worried, but Dennis noticed she appeared calm. Things turned out the way they needed, and Roma was no longer in their way. Dennis whispered to himself that he would teach Galina and her lover a lesson for their actions. They would pay for his friend's death. He had a plan and was ready to execute it at the funeral. When the cemetery was closing the coffin, he placed his friend's phone inside so it would be visible. Dennis instructed the attendees to allow Roma to keep the phone, so that all of his contacts would be with him. He dialed his friend's number and the phone gently vibrated while a familiar ringtone played. Dennis instructed the attendees to allow Roma to keep the phone, so that all of his contacts would be with him. He leaned over to bid farewell and whispered in his friend's ear, "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, but I will find the murderer." Dennis placed another SIM card in the coffin and kept Roma's SIM card for himself. The next day, he called from this number while Shinya was enjoying time with her lover. She answered the phone without looking at the screen and heard, "Hello, my dear Galkun, do you not want to tell me anything? You rarely visited me in the hospital. Now that you are free, perhaps you can tell me the whole truth about you and Maxi." Dolina turned pale and screamed upon seeing her cell phone screen, reading romance. She fainted and Maxim hurried to revive her. Dennis took a risk when disclosing all to Galina on the phone, without proof that it was Maxim's plan to frame Dolina. He didn't have proof that Galina Maxim planned an attempt on her life, but he took a chance and succeeded. Hysterics. This stoic woman became suddenly frightened, believing in supernatural powers. She was in a panic because it was not Maxim who planned it. Rather, Maxim had talked her into this adventure which she embarked on out of love and obedience. Now she was scared and didn't know what to do. Maxim calmed her down, assuring her that there was nothing to worry about. Despite this, Galina was still afraid. Maxim disconnected Galina's phone, yet the next day a call came through on her house phone. Once more, Galina heard a muffled voice as if from beneath the ground. "Do you really think I won't find you?" "Yes. I'll bring you up from under the ground. Although, what am I saying? I'm the one under the ground. Then I'll drag you to me. I'm warning you. Either go to the police and tell the whole truth, or I'll pursue you until you lose your mind. Galina lost consciousness once again. When she regained consciousness, she realized she had only one option. She called Dennis and asked him to come. Half an hour later, she met him at her house. Dennis was scared because for 2 days he couldn't recognize the woman, who had aged significantly and had fearful and crazy eyes. She was on the edge of madness. Galia disclosed to Dennis that it was Maxim who fabricated everything, and she just followed at his command because she was in love with him. Galia disclosed to Dennis that it was Maxim who fabricated everything, and she just followed at his command because she was in love with him. Galia confessed and was willing to testify against Maxim. Galia disclosed to Dennis that it was Maxim who fabricated everything, and she just followed at his command because she was in love with him. The case was done, and they would have to appear before the court. A week later, Dennis went to the cemetery with a bottle of white wine and 2 shot glasses. He placed 1 shot glass on the grave and held the other in his hand for a while. He placed 1 shot glass on the grave and held the other in his hand for a while. Then he spoke, saying, "My friend, I kept my promise. Rest well, and we will meet again in many years." Dennis drank the contents of the shot glass in 1 gulp and left the bottle on the grave. His mission was accomplished.